Okay, so Penny, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. It's a real pleasure to have you here. Been really looking forward to this one for quite some time. But just for my audience who maybe haven't been exposed to you much to this point, do you want to give us a bit of an overview as to firstly who you are?
Okay, I'm Penny Mallory. I am currently, I've had a few iterations of career. I'm currently a keynote speaker and my subject is mental toughness. That's what we're going to talk about. I've done lots of things in the past. I was a rally driver. I've done lots of adventure and adrenaline stuff and been a TV presenter. And I'm an author and I've done loads of stuff, but I think it was all in preparation for what I do now, which is speaking about mental toughness.
Okay, that's really interesting because you've had quite the history, like you mentioned, in terms of rally driving, for example, but feeling like now this is your purpose and your where you're really aiming to get to. But let's pull it back to the start. Let's go back to the rally driving first and foremost, because that might be what people know you for originally. How did you end up as a rally driver, the first female rally driver in the World Rally Championships, as far as I'm aware?
Well, I wasn't that, but I'll just rewind. So I'd seen rally driving on TV when I was a kid. I grew up with this image in my head of being a rally driver. It was never going to happen because I left home at 14. My life sort of fell to bits. It was never ever going to happen. But I had an opportunity to go to a rally school in my early 20s, which is way too late to start driving. I went to the rally school. It completely changed the course of my life. And I knew that this was the first time in my life I'd felt comfortable in this environment, that it was something that got me super excited about life again, and that I was going to become a champion. That was non-negotiable. I was not very good when I got in the car, and it takes time to get good at anything. It's very expensive driving rally cars, so I needed time and money to get good. So I got sponsorship very quickly. I was very lucky. I was quite good at getting sponsorship. And I managed to sort of accelerate through the ladder of rallying until 12 years of driving and amazing times. I ended up in a world rally car driving for Ford. This was beyond ridiculous. This should never have happened to me. And I am so proud. So I was the first woman to drive a car of this specification in the World Championship, not the first woman in the World Championship. I think still I'm the only woman to have driven for Ford in the World Rally Championship. So all of that stuff was amazing and beyond, genuinely beyond my wildest dreams. It should have never could have happened, but it did.
Absolutely. And you say it should never have happened, or it in some way seemed to take you by surprise. Let's go back a little bit earlier than that, then, in that case. So, what were the life events that almost led you to the point where you ended up in a rally car?
Um, in a nutshell, because I could talk about this for hours, but in a nutshell, I was born into a very middle class family that looked very nice on the outside. On the inside of my house, it was completely dysfunctional. My mom was an alcoholic and manic depressive. My dad was very scary. There was some very weird characters on the periphery of the family that kept coming into the house. Everything was just weird and horrible, and I hated it. I was an unhappy kid, and I ran away regularly at 14. I left. That's the very short version. It's a bigger story than that. But effectively by 14, I'd had enough. I couldn't deal with it. But what I hadn't realised until much later in life was that all those experiences had made me quite tough, quite resilient, because when stuff is relentlessly happening, you just find a way of bouncing back every time and seeing an alternative and realising there are choices and all that stuff that subliminally I was developing my mental toughness, which has stood me in really good stead. So I wouldn't change any of it. But it was in a funny way, like there's an awful lot of people that are very successful in life, but if you look at their background, it was horrible.
Absolutely.
Some people, it's an amazing springboard because you don't want this life for you or your kids, which I went on to have kids and they don't have the life that I had, thankfully. It makes you want to turn things around and be sort of not taking no for an answer, just pushing. So, for a lot of people, that the hard times actually are the best thing that ever happened to us, because they create our personality. All the chaos, the pain, the loss that we all experience in life. Some of us then respond very positively to that, and some of us just can't. And I'm fascinated by the mindset of people that can. But I suppose also fascinated by the mindset of people that can't. And I suppose that's what I spend my life doing, is trying to encourage people to adopt a mindset where there is other better stuff, there's other alternatives, and you can develop your mental toughness every day.
Absolutely. I suppose I'm interested in just connecting the dots here before we move on to the mental toughness stuff,
Yeah.
because what I find interesting about what you just said there was that there are people that can and people that can't, and I wonder whether it's such a black and white, either you're in one camp or you're not, and I suppose we'll answer that by the time we get to the end of today. But just to connect the dots between, you ran away from home a lot when you were younger, you had a difficult time during your upbringing, and then you ended up in the rally car. Can you just tell us the story? And I'm aware of this because I'm aware of you, but can you tell us the story of how you ended up going to the rally school, learning how to drive the car, and then ultimately being in the car?
Well, I was living in homeless hostels in London, and then I was living in really cheap squat type accommodation, and life was just proving too much of a challenge for me. So I guess I hit rock bottom on one day, and I had a decision to make. And this happens to a lot of people. You think, I can't do this anymore. I literally give up. And you hit a sort of rock bottom moment, which can be very useful, because you have to face a choice that I'm in or I'm out. And I thought, you know what, I can't give this all up, because the one thing I've always wanted to do was drive rally cars. I simply have to tick that box, and then I'll reassess. Well, thank goodness I did that. I got to the rally school. I could not tell you how I paid for it. I've no idea. And I got in the car, and the smell of the mud on the brakes and the fuel and the atmosphere, and putting on a smelly old helmet and gloves and boots and overalls and sliding around on gravel. I said, whoa, I can't believe I've been missing this all these years. And I just felt, for the first time, I think, in my entire life, so excited that there was something that felt like me. I felt like comfortable in the environment, because people always say, it's a male dominated, and, what's it like being a woman in a man's world? I never felt any of that stuff. And motorsport is incredibly inclusive and welcoming. I just thought, this is my home. And I'd been searching for a home forever. So it wasn't something I was going to let go easily. And I remember my instructor saying, you've had a nice day, well done, safe drive home. And I said, no, I've got to come back like tomorrow or the next day. And he said, well, this is a one-day course. You just do it and then you get on with your life. I said, no, this will be my life. And I remember him laughing at me. We're still friends to this day, 30, 40 years later.
Oh.
And he underestimated me. Everyone underestimated me, which I quite like. I quite like to prove everyone wrong. So I was back at that rally school, I think 3 or 4 days later, and running up a massive overdraft because it's expensive. And then I managed to land myself a sponsor very quickly. But it was a kind of full on, I'm having this and no one's going to change it. And so and there were millions of obstacles through this 12 years of driving. Every single obstacle that I came up against or was put in front of me, I'm moving it out the way, because this is all I want. So I became incredibly determined, focused. And motorsport is a cruel, cruel world, it's just full of heartbreak,
Absolutely.
But it's when you're in it and you're experiencing it, there's nothing like it. It's so exciting.
And I suppose that's where the mental toughness for you initially started to show through, maybe, or maybe is that the moment you started to realize I'm actually quite mentally resilient?
No, that happened about 10 years ago.
Okay.
It was never on my mind that I'm tough or I always thought I was pathetic and weak, and I always had very low opinion of myself. So there's absolutely no bit of my life did I think I was tough until relatively recently. And when you get to a certain age and you reflect on your life and you're thinking, well, I just thought that was normal, but no one else was doing that or has done that. So maybe it's not, maybe I'm not normal. But I am normal. I just when I've got something on my mind that I want, don't really want to let it go. So I'm
Sure.
probably more persistent, more relentless than most people. I'm quite disciplined. If I set myself a task, nothing will stop me. If I'm really, really committed, you know, God help you all, because I'm on it. And I think that's quite unusual. Most people are a bit more flaky than me.
Well, I suppose we're throwing quite a lot of words around here now about resilience and commitment and mental toughness. So now might be the perfect time for us to define actually what mental toughness is and what
Yeah,
it looks like. Because you're a keynote speaker, you talk about mental toughness every day, I would imagine, at
yeah,
this point. So
yeah.
do you want to define for us what mental toughness actually is?
So the academics will define mental toughness as a personality trait, which explains why you do stuff and why you don't do stuff. It is something we can all develop. It is something we can all change, but it's a spectrum, you know, and it's a spectrum for me. Every day, I might be one end of mentally tough or closer to mentally sensitive, depends what's going on in my life. And for everybody, there is degrees of, you know, you'll slide up and down that continuum of mentally tough to mentally sensitive. On the whole, they say mental toughness is an advantage because you can bounce back from stuff. You can find you're quite resourceful and committed and focused. But it doesn't mean that mental sensitivity is a bad thing, because mentally sensitive people are extremely important. They're very valuable. They're empathetic and creative, and they probably don't cope so well with stress and pressure, but they could be the glue in an organization or a friendship group or a family. So there's nothing wrong with being mentally sensitive at all. It's just that mentally tough people can probably take on and cope with stuff better.
Okay.
But we never stay in one place, you know. A phone call, a text could send my confidence from quite high to rock bottom. You know,
Okay.
that's just how it goes.
A lot of people who will be listening to this will probably be boxing themselves off now in terms of, right, I'm mentally tough or I'm mentally sensitive, or maybe they think they're somewhere along that spectrum as you spoke about. When you say that you can shift from one end to the other during a day, is that usually more like external factors, or are people more in control of that than they maybe think they are?
So it's important for me to remind people that your mental responses, John, and mine, and everyone in the world, our mental responses to situations determines the outcome, determines how happy we are, determines how successful we are. So you hear something, you read something, somebody says something, you, without even realizing you're doing it, will mentally respond to it. You might be hurt, you might be upset, you might be angry, and when we think stuff, it makes us feel a certain way. When we feel a certain way, we act a certain way. And when we act a certain way, it determines who we become. So, all of everyone listening to this right now, please, if you remember nothing from this conversation, please remember that your mental responses to every situation in your life will determine your life. If you roll over and give up every time something happens or changes, like your life is going to be really hard. But and sometimes it's good to just stop. Something happens, you think, stop. Okay, my instant mental response was very negative and not helpful. Let me think again. I can respond differently to this. And then I'll feel different, and then I'll act different, then the outcome will be different. So, really important. And this is for every single human being on the planet. It's not for special people or different people, it's for everyone. And if you look at the quality of some people's lives, it will be, if you track back, that they've made a bunch of really bad decisions, or they haven't responded very positively to something that's happened to them. And it can be really hard, you know, if you keep on getting battered by life, it can be really hard to keep on responding in a positive way. It's because sometimes it's just overwhelming, it's too much. But we can all develop the ability to mentally respond better. And you're going to ask me in a minute about the 4 areas of mental toughness, and I'll break them down, I'll explain them. But before I do that, it's important to remember that these 4 areas that I'm about to describe, they all change all of the time. So I could assess somebody's mental toughness with a psychometric test. It's an online thing. And whatever your mental toughness is set at that moment in time, tomorrow afternoon could be a completely different story because something's happened that you weren't expecting and it's knocked you sideways, because we all get affected by stuff. So that's the important thing, that it does shift and change. We have a lot more control over the quality of our life than perhaps we like to admit. The victim stance, that sort of this growth mindset, isn't there? A fixed mindset. People, mentally tough people have a growth mindset. Like, this is not good. I'm not enjoying this, but I'm going to find a way through it. I know that it will end. I know that I can turn this around. They're very optimistic and hopeful. Whereas a fixed mindset might be, life is chucking all this stuff at me. It's not fair. There's nothing I can do about it. That feels like a very poor victim stance, because there's always something you can do about everything.
I think what's interesting about what you say is obviously the space that I work in fitness with the women that we work with, quite often they come in and they probably, in the initial consultation, they err towards the victim mindset. Potentially they feel like they don't have control, or even that they didn't have a choice. Like they've ended up where they are, not through any choice of their own, potentially wanting to change their body, change their mindset, change their health in some way.
Yeah.
But from what I'm hearing, people have more choice than maybe what they realize.
Of course they do. I have a choice. I'm about to be 60, which is ridiculous because I don't think I look it. I certainly don't feel it or act it. But I do get up at 5:30 every day of the week and go to the gym for 1.5 to 2 hours because that's my choice. Because I know that means I'm going to live a longer life. That I'll be slimmer. I'll feel healthier. I'll think more clearly. My mood is lifted. The benefits of physical activity. Those are all choices I make that people say, oh, well, you're lucky because you look like that. I'm not lucky. I've been massively overweight in my life and it's miserable. And it was all bad choices I made. So incredibly frustrating, if I would imagine, if you're working with people who it's everyone else's or everything else's fault that I am the way I am, when actually that is utter rubbish. You are in control of your life, because if you're not, who else could be?
Absolutely. And I suppose the first pillar is control. So we're going to get into that, but I absolutely can relate to what you just said there, that it's frustrating for somebody. I would class myself as someone who views a situation as, how can I change this? What can I do about this? How can I control this situation?
Yeah.
And it is frustrating when you're talking to somebody and it's the opposite. There's nothing I can do about this. I can't help it. My circumstances are my circumstances and there's no way to change it. So I'm hoping as we work through these 4 pillars, people will find some practical ways that they can maybe shift even slightly. I know it takes maybe longer than just this short podcast, but they can shift slightly along that spectrum towards having more control and taking more decisions, let's say.
I hope so too. And as we work through this, I want everyone listening to think, hang on a minute, how does this apply to my life? How can I use what she's saying for me right now? And stop avoiding the truth and stop putting excuses in the way. Listen to this with a really open mind. And actually, how can I use, even if one tiny thing, how could I shift something today?
So refreshing. So let's do the first of the 4 pillars. Let's do control. So do you want to define for me this first pillar, or if you want to, however you want to talk about this, Penny, this is your subject.
Okay, so there are four pillars, as you call them, 4 aspects, 4 parts, whatever word you want to put on it. They all begin with C. There's control, challenge, commitment, and confidence. I'll work through each of them and explain what they are. Control. The sense of control you have of your life. I know where I want to be in life. I know how I'm going to get there. If it all goes wrong, if I've thrown some curveballs, I know I can make another plan, because ultimately I'm very clear about what my life what I want my life to be like, what I want to achieve in life, where I want to live, what job I want, what family, friends, the quality of my life. I feel in control. It feels so good when you're in control. And I think people work harder, they bounce back quicker, they're more resilient when they're in control, because they know, there's lots of things that are going to push us off course every day, but ultimately, I've got this. So having a sense of control of your life it feels good. I've lost control so many times in my life, and anyone that has listening that feels out of control knows it is the worst feeling ever. But you can have some control. You can't control everything, but you can influence quite a lot of things. Stop trying to control the uncontrollable, obviously. So there's the sense of control you have of your life, and then there's emotional control. Having control of your emotions. And most people could do with a bit more emotional control. Some people have too much. Some people are so in control of their emotions that you can't read them. You have absolutely no idea what they're thinking. And that's as much of a problem as having no emotional control. So it's about understanding, having a real high level of self-awareness. I know how pretty much I respond to this. I mean, I'm in some areas that I score very low, because in relationship stuff, my emotional control is terrible. And I know that all comes from my background. But in other areas, it's very high. So we can all control our emotions. We can learn to do that better. And we can also influence the emotions of others. If you've ever been in a room of really stressed people, you know it rubs off on you and you start to feel stressed. If you're in a room of really happy, jolly people, it sort of rubs off too. So emotions are contagious. They're infectious. If you're a mentally tough person, you tend to separate other people's emotions from your own. So you don't let that infection work on you. And that can be an incredibly useful skill. So you stay independent of what's going on around you. So that's control. Is there anything you want to ask me about control, or should I move to the next one?
Yeah, I think I'd be interested to know if we put this into the context of most of the audience that are listening to this. It's going to be fitness related. It will be nutrition related, training related. Now, whilst I don't expect you to give specific nutrition advice to anybody, but when people are in a situation where they almost feel like they're in that hamster wheel of, I have no control and I cannot get out of this wheel. I'm stuck in this day to day. My family life is how it is. My professional life is how it is. Is there any actionable takeaways that people can look at
Well,
to?
your people aren't going to like this, but actually, in terms of fitness and health, control is is the easiest of all, because you can control all of it. You really can. And people go, well, I can't stop eating chocolate. I've got an addiction to chocolate. Well, you haven't. You can make a decision to change that. So the control around the fitness and health is really straightforward. I haven't got enough time. Well, I get up at 5:30 every day to do it. And if I could do that, you could do that. And in the summer, it's even earlier than that because it's light. And I'm an early person anyway. But Olympians have as many hours in the day as everyone else. So we all have the choices. We just make excuses. So it's about being really honest with yourself and go, well, actually, if I was really honest, I probably could do that. And when I am in the gym, if I do make it to the gym, I don't have to give up after 6 reps with a lightweight. I could if I wanted to push myself a little bit harder. And if I did that every day and compounded those results, I'd probably be stronger. I'd probably fitter. I'd probably look a bit better. That's all in my control.
I
But
don't
it's
know
these
if you're
mental responses, you see, that
absolutely.
screw it all up.
I don't know if you're aware. There's a bit of a split in the industry at the minute. That you have almost one side of the fitness industry that is very soft in their approach. You can eat whatever you want as long as you eat it in moderation. You don't need to get up early. Just a couple of home workouts a week will help you. Whereas it's probably the other end of the industry where I'm going to place myself, which is quite well aligned with yourself, and that is that you have choices to make, and you're going to get out of this process what you put into this process, and that might mean making hard decisions at time, but ultimately those hard decisions are things you have control over. You just have to take a stance on them. So in short, on that subject, this kind of soft approach of the fitness industry versus the slightly harder, where would you place yourself with your own training? Where would you place yourself with your own mindset?
Well, all I would say was look at the results of somebody who takes that approach and somebody who takes that approach. The results will be different. It's a no-brainer. You get in, you get out what you put in. You just said it. If I work really hard regularly, I'm going to get a better result than if I do a little bit every so often. It's just it's just so obvious, you know. I find it really frustrating that everything's sort of wound back to make things easier. And well, fine, make it easier, but don't expect the results, because nothing easy, nothing, you know, significant and important comes easy in life. That's just the way it is. So I am absolutely your end of the spectrum. You know, push yourself. And actually, do you know what? You might enjoy it. You might be really impressed with yourself. You might find out something about yourself you didn't know. Why don't you just try that? And
Absolutely.
then it gets addictive and it feels so good. You want more of it. So yeah, it's a complete no-brainer. I find it frustrating when people are making excuses and trying to go the other end of the spectrum, because I know that only not frustrated for any other reason than I know those people would be so impressed with themselves if they could shift up the other end of the spectrum and see faster results. Everything in your life changes, as you well know. Everything changes when you're fit and healthy and alert and ready for everything. And when you're physically strong, you're mentally strong. And who doesn't want some of that?
I think what's interesting about, we say, before we move on to commitment, the second part of this, but it's the idea that people are usually looking for a strategy. They're looking for a secret or a strategy that I have or one of my peers has, that's going to change everything for them, rather than approaching what we're talking about here, which is the difficult decisions that probably need to be made.
Well, I think there is a strategy. Do it a lot and do it a bit more every day. That's it. That is the secret, you know. Boom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So should we talk about the second part of this, because that probably ties in very nicely.
Yeah.
You say do it and commit to it almost. Well, that's the second part of this, right? Commitment.
Okay, so you want to go to commitment. Okay, so commitment is a person's ability to set a task and complete a task. It's very easy to set a task or a goal or a mission. It's not always so easy to complete it. I want to be a rally champion. Easy to say. Really not easy to make happen. But when you're committed to something, it's a game changer. Anything in life that requires commitment means that you need to be very clear about, you know, what you're trying to achieve. So it's all about setting those very specific, measurable goals, which is all a bit cringy and cheesy, but it's kind of true. I'm rowing the Atlantic next year. I know I will get to Antigua at some point, but I need to make quite a plan in order that I can commit to certain things to make sure that it will happen. Because if I don't commit to certain things, it won't happen. And I want it to happen. I'm committed. And commitment is hard. It means you sacrifice things. It means you push yourself. It means you make hard choices. And most people don't like doing that stuff. They want life to be easy and choices to be straightforward. And quite often they're not. They're very challenging. So setting goals, understanding what it takes to get to that goal, breaking it down into little pieces. You know, I want to lose 5 stone, so I need to go to the gym for at least an hour 4 times a week, and I need to do this stuff. And then you need to commit to it, because you can set that as a goal and do nothing about it. Well, guess what? Nothing will happen. But commitment people find quite hard. And I don't think you can be a bit committed to anything, by the way. You can't be 50% committed to losing weight or getting fit. You're either in or you're out. And stop kidding yourself that 50% commitment will mean it will happen.
I find this fascinating, because I've heard you say before, which I really loved, by the way, and I think the phrase was, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, you can't be 99% committed to something. What do you mean by that?
I mean, commitment is all in. If I'm 99% in, a bit of me is out, which is absolutely fine, but don't call it commitment. It's having a go, preparing to fail, whatever you want to call it. And that's absolutely fine. But if I said to you, are you completely committed to this thing? Like 100% committed, you're fully in. Most people go, maybe I'm not completely. Okay, fine. So you're not committed. Call it something else, but don't kid yourself you're committed when you're not. And it's actually very hard to be fully committed to something, because we're all split in a million directions. But I was committed to driving cars. I was committed to boxing. I was committed to getting to the top of the mountains. I'm committed to getting to Antigua. and I practice what I preach. So I'm talking from experience. Commitment is really hard. You think about your marriage, your relationship. Am I really 100% in this? Or is a little bit of me thinking, well, life could be different or better, or if I wasn't in this? It's an uncomfortable conversation. And
Can
people,
I just clarify, when you say you can't be 100% committed, because I think one of the questions that I've had, because I've had conversations about that phrase before, because I completely see where you're coming from and would agree with it. But I suppose the question that comes up for me or with my clients is priorities versus commitment. So somebody might say, I'm 100% committed to something, but I also have many other priorities that I'm committed to. So what would be the difference?
well, I think that's the reality of life, But I suppose the problem is the word but. I'm committed, but. Well, if you're committed, let's take a tangible example of somebody who wants to lose 3 stone and has joined the gym, got themselves a PT, and that's their goal. Well, if you commit to that, there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be 100% in. Okay, I do get that every so often you might have a piece of chocolate or a bag of crisps, or grab a sandwich that you shouldn't. But if you were really committed, you wouldn't do that anyway. There are some people who, professional footballers, professional sports people who don't break the rules. And guess why? They're at the top of their game. So every time you set yourself a goal and you say you're committed and then you break the rules that you set yourself, you've got to ask yourself, and no one else, ask yourself perhaps why that goal has either taken longer or is a bit more challenging than you thought. Because commitment is really hard. It's not a word. It's all action.
So what would be the main reason people maybe wouldn't commit? Is it the fear of failure?
I wouldn't like to generalize. I think for some people, they take on too much and maybe over they think they can achieve more than they can because their time is split in so many different ways. And I'm not naive. I understand life is hard. Everything's expensive, and that we're earning. Some people are working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. It's hard. So I couldn't generalize on that, but I think, and if you're listening to this, you probably know the answer in your own head. Why we commit to things and they don't happen. The sense of satisfaction, and you'll know this because I'm sure you've done this 1,000 times, the sense of satisfaction you get when you commit and it happens, is like, yeah. And when that happens and you go, okay, that's not a coincidence, that happened because I was fully in. So next time I want, the next thing that comes along that you want to achieve, what's got to happen for that to become a reality. And then it's for me, it's just become a habit. So that's just how I operate. That's, and if there's something I say, like I wanted to learn to ice skate and I went 2 or 3 times a week for a year. And I hurt myself and that knocked my confidence. And so my commitment started to slip because I was a bit scared, if I'm honest. It's quite dangerous. And I was quite perfectly aware. I wasn't making excuses. I knew that's why my commitment was slipping, because actually I was a bit scared.
I think one of the most interesting, what you say, I think one of the most powerful things that I've learned about commitment is getting somebody or showing somebody a result for their commitment, almost a return on investment, let's call it, is probably the most powerful thing I can do as a coach for them to go on and achieve even more. If they see a return on their investment, I committed 100%, this is what happened because of that. Seeing that return on investment is probably the most powerful.
How do you do that? How do you show somebody?
So something that we try and do, and I'm huge on when somebody joins our program, is find a way to get quick wins. So the first 28 days of somebody's time in our program is probably the most vital. We have clients who stay with us for 2, 3, 4 years, but the reason they're with us so long, in my opinion, is because they had a win in their first 28 days. There was tangible reason for them to continue. They see that something works, they see a return on their investment for their commitment, obviously a financial commitment, but also in time, in effort, and they see a return on that investment. So they almost get that foot up, or they get that foothold where they can then continue on from there.
So what they get is proof of concept. You said that would happen, I did it, and that's correct. So if I do that, I win. It works. And
I think
that's what most of us, we seek evidence, don't we, around us, that if I do this, this will go this way.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's one more concept that I'm interested in here around the commitment thing, and it's something that I talk about a fair amount, and that is the idea of balance. Because one conversation that I will have, let's say daily, is the idea of balance. Okay, I want to achieve X, but I also want balance in doing so.
Mm-hmm.
How would you approach balance? I mean, it's such a personal perspective, right?
It is. And the best thing I ever read in a book 20 years ago was forget balance. If you want something, the whole point is that you get no balance at all. If you try and prioritize 10 things, they're all 10 things are important. You can't give all of them 100%. You've got to give 10% to each of them. If you're going to give something 10%, expect 10% back. So if you want to row the Atlantic, for example, I have to give it everything. If I give it everything, the chances are it will go well. So I'm not having any balance in that. I'm not trying to juggle it with other stuff because it won't work. So taking the balance away is really how. So you look at a professional footballer or someone like that, there's no balance. They don't have a social life. They don't go out for a curry on a Thursday night. There is no balance. It's all in on one thing. Hence, they become incredibly successful, earn a fortune, and it sort of, they get their goal. So there is an argument for forget balance. But let's be realistic. We all have families and friends and social life and work and da-da-da. So just, I suppose the reality is, if you want to make a balance, then maybe reduce your expectations of what you can achieve. Because really, only high performance, top elite results come from no balance.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of round off the commitment thing, is there anything that we've missed on the commitment subject that maybe people could take away, that they could use, that they can implement, other than being like ultimately you're committed or you're not?
I think it's just to sum it up, really be very clear about what you're trying to achieve, super specific, the time, put numbers on it, and then have a conversation with yourself. In order to achieve that thing, I'm prepared to do this, and then do it. Don't be making excuses. There's no need. And when you achieve that thing, you'll understand what commitment really means. And if you don't achieve that thing, you'll understand what commitment really means. Just be honest with yourself, set the goal, set the steps, and then do it. And stop making excuses.
Perfect. And I think that leads us nicely onto the next, if you're okay to move on to the next. And if somebody's committed, it's one thing. But when they face challenge, maybe that's the most difficult time for them to remain committed. So do you want to move us on to challenge, the kind of next pillar?
Yeah, so challenge is a person's ability to see the challenge they face as an opportunity rather than a threat. So something happens, my mental response goes, oh my God, this is a nightmare. How am I going to cope with this? A mentally tough person, when faced with a challenge, goes, okay, this is interesting. How can I flip it? There's something great about this problem. They have a very different approach to the challenges, and life will challenges every single day. It's important to remember that in order to face any challenge, there will probably require some sort of change in us, either in thinking or behaviour, in order to face this challenge. And most people don't like change. They will resist it at all costs. I love change, which is why I quite like a challenge, because I don't mind. I know everything's got to change in order for me to reach this thing. So it's about in order for you to see the challenge as an opportunity, you've got to learn to flip the script in your head. See the same thing from a different perspective. If I break this apart and look at it from that perspective, I'm going to find what's great about this problem hiding in there. And that is a really good question for you guys listening. What is great about this problem? Even if it's something horrendous, there'll be something you're going to learn, something you'll experience, people you're going to meet that will offer something you didn't have before. But it's quite often the challenges that we face means we need to stretch ourselves a little bit. We need to do things that don't feel terribly comfortable. We have to perhaps step outside our comfort zone, embrace the growth that we might experience. And do you know what? The truth is, most people don't like any of that stuff. Nobody really wants to get out of their comfort zone. Nobody wants to stretch themselves. It takes effort, it's energy, it's hard. So most people avoid it. But if you meet some really top leaders in big organizations, the really cool, switched on smart cookies who are battered by challenges every day, they will be continually flipping this stuff into positives. Don't drag them down. They get quite excited because they know they're going to learn something. They know it's going to reveal something they didn't know before. And we can do that on like tiny little levels and big levels. So there's challenges, and the reality is not everything's going to go our way because life doesn't work like that. So even when things don't go our way, part of the challenge pillar is being able to learn from whatever happened. So all the challenges you and I have faced and everyone listening has faced through your life, you look back and you go, do you know what? It was horrible at the time, but it did teach me quite a lot. And I did meet those people. I did go to those places. So it came out okay. And I wouldn't be the person I was today if I hadn't been there. So there's always something positive to take from an experience, even when you're in it and it's horrendous. This storm too shall pass. Everything moves and changes. So if you're having a really horrible time, you just need to hold on tight because it will pass because nothing stays the same.
So it's almost being able to see challenge as opportunity,
100%,
right?
exactly that.
Okay. And when somebody does face a challenge, they face a setback. And if we put this into the terms of the people who are probably listening to this, they're going to say those challenges come in the form of maybe being busy, maybe work related, maybe family related, maybe it's to do with nutrition. They have a setback, they fall off their nutrition plan, they fall off their training plan. Is there a go-to way that you can come back from challenges or you can respond to challenges?
Well, I would just say go back to that thing, the mentally respond thing, because somebody could be made redundant or like that'd be horrendous and send you into a right old downer. But how you respond to that situation will determine probably how long you're going to be redundant, what the next step is. You're going to have to learn to bounce back pretty quick with a positive mindset. And I hate these overused words, positive mindset, but just think about how you could flip this. That there could be something, maybe you're being made redundant because there's something amazing around the corner. How you mentally respond, and I'm going to keep on banging on about this because it is basically the fundamental foundation for the quality of your life. If you're hit by a challenge, just question yourself, how did I respond to that? Could I do it a different way? Could tomorrow be a reset? Could the next phone call, could that be my new opportunity and a sort of wipe the slate clean? You do it every 5 minutes of your life. You didn't have to wait till Monday. How could I mentally respond better to this challenge? How could I flip it? And I do it all day long. It's exhausting when you're in my head because I'm doing this all the time. Just a little tiny thing goes right, like I might smash an egg in the kitchen, goes all over the floor. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. In this instance, it doesn't matter. But my brain just is constantly trying to encourage myself to see things positively.
I suppose one thing, and please disagree with me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is that almost the human form, the human mind is wired to try and avoid challenge, right? And be comfortable. Is that correct? Or would that be
I don't think you can avoid challenge. I think shit is gonna hit your fan all of your life. You can't avoid it. It's just life.
Mm-hmm.
I think the secret is how much you let it batter you, knock you over. And, stuff will knock us over, but it's then how quickly we can bounce back. I'm not naive enough to think that life could be easy if you did all this stuff. It's always going to be hard. Everything's a challenge. Everything's hard. End of. But we do have choices about how we cope with hard. How we respond. I'm using the same language, so I apologise, but it's hard when I know that this is the secret: how you mentally respond to the world and to the things that attract you.
But that's how this kind of links back, right? Because we talked about control earlier, and this almost loops right back round in terms of you face the challenge, but then there's still the element of control and the element of choice in terms of how you respond to it.
Yeah, and they're all linked. These are not really separate concepts. They are completely intertwined. You can't really separate them out because something happens that knocks my confidence, but suddenly I can't be asked anymore. My commitment's gone. They're all linked and they all work together, which is why it's complex. And to simplify, I'm trying probably oversimplifying it because life is absolutely not straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the only way I can. If I break it down for people, there just might be something they think, actually, do you know what? That one thing would affect everything, so I'm going to do that.
And I suppose with them all being linked, if we look at the final one here, which is confidence, I actually wanted to share something with you that I wanted to get your take on. But one of the things that we see quite a lot in the industry and in our coaching business is people breaking their own trust and losing confidence in themselves. And to hopefully lead you into what you're going to talk about here in terms of confidence, I'd be interested to hear your take on this. But there's a story that I tell people all the time, which is to do with arranging a coffee with somebody. So let's say you and I arranged a coffee for today. Rather than this podcast, we arranged to meet in a coffee shop and I didn't turn up. I'd messaged you and I said, listen, Penny, I'm so sorry. I got my times wrong. Can we do tomorrow instead? Maybe you'd forgive me. Maybe you wouldn't. But maybe you'd forgive me. Maybe you'd show up the next day. If I then let you down a second time, the chances of you turning up a third time, I'd say at this point, are close to zero. For some people, they would. But again, there's going to come a breaking point for most people where they lose confidence in the fact I'm going to show up like I said I would. And this is almost the example I give when people say they're going to start Monday, they're going to do the diet this time, they're going to follow through on it, they're going to do the exercise, they're going to show up 5 days a week at the gym, and then they don't, and the trust gets broken. And this is almost how I represent losing trust in yourself. But would that represent the fourth pillar quite well, or?
Yeah, trust is fundamentally important in all of those things. Like, I'm going to trust that if I give up my time to meet you, I'm going to trust that you're not going to piss me around, basically, and waste my time. Because if you break my trust in that, we made a commitment to meet, and you broke it. So now I don't trust you. That's important. But as you said, in the gym, if somebody says I'm going to do this program for a week, yep, promise, John, I'm going to go home. I'm going to do 12 of those sit-ups every day, and they don't, and you're like, oh, I'm sure it's draining for you because you get excited about what results that people could get, and they're letting themselves down. So the confidence thing, the confidence you have in your own ability to do something. I know I can do this. I know even if I've never done it before, I think I've got it in me to do it. So some people, I suppose I'm trying to think about your gym situation. Some people naturally have learned stuff. They're skillful. They are talented. They are really good at stuff. And you'd think that person would have a level of confidence to achieve something. But actually, they don't necessarily go hand in hand. You can have people who are incredibly intelligent, skillful, but they have no confidence that they can do that thing. So they don't necessarily go hand in hand. There'll be another bunch of people who have absolutely, and you will have met these people, they've never been in a gym, they've absolutely not got a clue what they're doing. But I tell you what, They are absolutely going to smash this. They will just learn. They have the confidence that they will achieve this thing. So the talent, the skill, the experience, they don't go hand in hand with confidence.
Sometimes we have to pull those people back a little bit because they can be slightly overconfident.
Exactly. And then, you're running into the realms of injury and, all sorts of things. And we all know people who have really high confidence and really low confidence, but it doesn't correlate with their ability. So that's we talk to ourselves. We all do, don't we, all the time. That's never going to stop. And which is why the way you talk to yourself in your head is fundamentally important. You spend your whole life in your head. You have to make this a good place for you to live. So confidence comes from experience. I did it on Monday. It was okay. So it gives me a bit of confidence to do it on Tuesday. Tuesday went okay. I'm going to do it again on Wednesday. You start building up that bank of evidence that things go well, your confidence rises. It will get knocked because not everything goes to plan. But we all need evidence to back up our story.
So this kind of links back in.
People will look for evidence that doesn't support the story, or they'll look for false evidence. So they're excuses, aren't they? I've tried that and it doesn't work. Well, did you really? Because if you did do it, it would work.
Yeah, we see that a lot. Everybody who comes into our program in some way says they're doing everything, but they're not seeing the results for doing everything until they actually do everything, and then they see the results for it. And I suppose this links into the 28 days concept that we were talking about earlier, how we see that as the most important part of what we do. If we can provide somebody a receipt, as we call it, receipts for a return on their investment, their chances of success later down the line become stronger. I suppose the question I have is, when somebody's lost their confidence in themselves, so they don't believe themselves anymore, they don't believe that they're going to follow through because they've let themselves down, on many occasions, or maybe it hasn't worked out, let's say, is there a way you can rebuild that other than providing yourself the receipts?
Well, I think that's part of it, is that it doesn't matter if you've let yourself down or you didn't do what you said you're going to do. Just you could spend an awful lot of time dwelling on that, or you could actually just draw a line in the sand and go, whatever, I'm starting again. And this time I know what's likely to stop me. I know what's likely to get in my way, to distract me. So I'm going to make a strategy. I'm going to make a plan so that it doesn't happen. And that takes quite a lot of honesty. And when you get that sort of breakthrough of honesty, that's when things can change. And the thing is, a lot of people do let themselves down because it's so easy, because commitment is so hard. It's easy to break that promise to yourself that you were going to do something because you just blame it on 1,000 other things. So it's all of this stuff really, Jono, is about self-awareness.
Yeah.
I know that I'm likely, when the alarm clock goes off, I'm likely to go, nah, not today.
Mm-hmm. Which, when you're rowing across the Atlantic, as you are, Penny, you probably can't afford to do that.
Well, if I do, I'm going to upset everyone else on board who is doing that, and it's going to be a miserable experience. I won't feel good about myself. Sometimes the thought of doing something is so much worse than doing it. Mm-hmm. So when the alarm, I'll be getting up, I'll get 1 hour of sleep at a time. And when that alarm clock goes off, I know every single one of us on the boat will be going, no, please don't make me go back out and sit on those oars for 2 hours. But that's the commitment we all make. And we do it with a smile on our face. Because we could do it grumpy, but we've all chosen to do this exercise. Let's do it regardless. So
I suppose there's an accountability factor to that as well, right? That there's accountability to not just the promise you made to yourself, but the people that you made the commitment to.
Yeah, which is why, we're all in it together, and we can't let ourselves down. We can't let each other down, and that's quite nice to have that accountability sort of bouncing around. The other area of confidence, by the way, is interpersonal confidence. The ability to which the extent to which we're prepared to lean on other people for help. People have come to you because they want you to help them achieve their weight goals, physical goals, whatever it might be. We all need other people for everything. Very few of us achieve much on our own. And most of us, I'm really bad at this. I don't like to ask for help. I like to do stuff without troubling anyone. But actually, it can be really fun doing stuff with other people, and people quite like to be leaned on. So we will always achieve more when we do things together. Even a solo sport, these people are not doing it on their own. They have a team of people around them. So I'm embracing the idea of a team. I do a lot of award ceremonies, and people come on stage and they've won an award. I'm like, I applaud you for winning the award, but really this is your team. It's a team award because no one won that award on their own. So that interpersonal confidence, leaning into other people, leaning on other people, and being, offering that for other people, because that's what makes the world go round.
Is there, just quickly on this, is there a difference between accountability and interpersonal confidence, or are they quite similar?
I think that there's differences. If I lean on somebody and say, can you help me? That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be accountable to each other. I just want your unadulterated help. And it'd be quite, and nobody expects anything of it. But it's quite like, people do random acts of kindness, don't they? Because it makes themselves feel good.
Yes, absolutely. So I suppose this is a great opportunity now for us to summarize all the stuff we've been through, because we've been through quite a lot there, and I think there's quite a lot of takeaways that we've gone through as we went through those pillars. But if we're to summarize for people listening who are going to go away and they're going to get stuck back into the career, get stuck back into the family life of today, even an hour from now, something else will have happened and they'll be in the thick of something. What's the biggest takeaway that they could take?
Mental responses. Be really, really mindful of how you respond to a situation, because it will determine the outcome. That's number one thing. I'm taking everything to the extreme. So obviously that's not going to suit most people that operate like me. When I talk about commitment and you're all in, I don't want people to say it's not bad if you don't. It's just that's how you get the best results, by doing things hard, the hard stuff. That's where the real results are. And you know what? I think going to the gym specifically is the most obvious way to prove this. Because when you go to the gym and you work hard and you do it properly, the results are actually quite fast and they are really pleasing. So I think in the territory of hard lies the magic. And it's that outside your comfort zone thing, the things you feel uncomfortable, things you don't really want to do them anyway, and feel the benefits. Because most people live a small life when they're capable of a big life, and that's not going to suit everyone, but they probably don't even get to understand what they're capable of, and I think that's just tragic. When you push yourself a little bit, you go, bloody hell, I'm amazing.
People can surprise themselves, and I definitely see that on a daily basis. People shock themselves as what they're capable of, but I suppose it requires the commitment, the control, the challenge, and all of that stuff to happen first, right?
And it is the foundation. This stuff that we've just spent an hour talking about is the foundation of a happy life, a successful life, with your high performance. You can increase each of these areas of your life a tiny bit every day, and it all compounds, and suddenly you think, yeah, life is exciting instead of depressing.
So Penny, I know a lot of people that I work with and that I talk to on a daily basis will be massively inspired by some of the stuff you've said today. Can you tell us how they can hear more from you, how they can find more about what you do?
Put my name into Google, it'll send you to my website. On that website, there's loads of blogs that talk about mental toughness, and like if you're in sales or stuff, there's a little bit there for everyone. Obviously, I speak at conferences all the time about mental toughness, so get yourself into an audience somehow. Invite me to speak at your event. And there's loads of stuff on YouTube and on TikTok. I've just started all the social media, the obvious stuff. You will find tips. There's a book, 365 Ways to Develop Mental Toughness. There's stuff everywhere. But yeah, it depends what you're after. I also do coaching, but I'm tough. That's a hard experience, but very rewarding.
Mhm.
Yeah, so just
So
good.
as long as they search Penny Mallory somewhere on any platform, they're going to find your
Find me haunting them somewhere.
perfect. Well, also from me personally, I want to thank you for joining us because I think so many people have got so much value from this, and I want to wish you luck for rowing the Atlantic, which is next year.
It's 401 days from today. Tomorrow, 400 days. It's literally a year away, and this has been on my mind for 8 years. It's getting scarily close, and I'm as excited as I am terrified.
I don't blame you. I'm terrified for you. Well,
Yeah,
Penny, thank you so much for today. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody will appreciate the time you spent with us.
absolute pleasure.